Thank you, Lerato. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lerato mentioned, I'm Diane Moodley from the South African Banking Risk Information Center, and today's topic will be on banking scams and schemes and what to look out for. Just a quick one as to who SABRIC is. We are the South African Banking Risk Information Center. We are formed and funded by 17 bank members that report their crime risk information to SABRIC. From there, we will be able to determine what are the MOs, what are the schemes, what are the scams, and then be more of an advisory to the banks so that they can mitigate any risks within their institutions. So today's topic will be more on card crime, give you an indication as to what the modus operandi associated with card crime is. Skimming, basically a formula of a type of term that is being used by the banking industry, whereby the suspects, or should I say the miscreants, steal information from your card, and that is basically using a device that is called a skimming device that records information that is stored on your mag stripe of your card itself. Card swapping, this is whereby you are transacting at an ATM and where you are then approached by a miscreant. He uses some type of social engineering to assist you at the ATM and then basically steals the card. You as the client think that the card is in the machine, but unfortunately the card is in possession of the miscreant or the person that is assisting you at the ATM. They use a term that is referred to as shoulder surfing to actually obtain the card PIN number, and once they leave the ATM, they will go to the next ATM and then withdraw the money. We have another term called CNP, which is card not present fraud. This is where the miscreants will basically steal information that's contained on the face of the card. That is basically your card number, your expiry date, and at the back of the card, you'll see that there's 3 digits, which we refer to as CVV, card verification value. If they have that information, they can go online and then purport to be you who's purchasing certain items on the internet. And what they would do is then defraud you, basically defraud your bank. The other terminology that has been used is phishing. We'll go more into phishing and what phishing actually entails. And the second one is vishing, what we refer to as voice over IP, where the person purports to be from a specific organization, phones you, and purports to be from a bank or an institution, and then what he would ask or she would ask for is personal information. What we have, or what the banks have actually introduced to try and mitigate this type of fraud, is that they have now introduced the virtual card, which is safe. And this type of card is basically stored in your profile of your banking app. So customers can immediately load a virtual card on their bank profile and link it to their debit card, or maybe a credit card or a Fusion card. It all depends on what product you have with the bank, and you can actually create a virtual card for that specific product that you have. It is simple, safe, smart enough to change its 3-digit CVV in an hour, every hour. So behind the card itself, as your physical card, the CVV number, the card verification value, is changed every hour. So this makes it safe. If so somehow the criminal gets that type of information, they cannot conclude the transaction. Reason being is that they don't have the CVV number. You can pay with your virtual card, which is either your debit or a credit card, at any merchant that accepts contactless payments. All you have to do is add your card to your mobile device, place it near a POS terminal, and the RFID function will be activated, and that will actually read your card and process the transaction. You can use your mobile, or should I say, you can use your virtual card on mobile platforms, which is Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, FitPay, Pay, and Garmin Pay. So the virtual card also has its own number generated instantly on the app. So if for some reason you see that the card number is different from your physical card itself, it doesn't really matter, because that card number is actually linked to your main account, what we refer to as PAN, your primary account number. It also has a new expiry date, and the lifespan of this virtual card is actually 5 years. So some of the terminology that if you familiarize yourself with is quite important so you understand what the criminals actually do. Social engineering, this exploits the human vulnerability because criminals know that the weakest link in the information security chain is us as human beings. It is us that actually reveal information to the criminals itself. So this is where we've got to be alert on who we give information and where do we actually write out personal information. So social engineering is a tactic, as I mentioned, used to gather information about you, and this information that they have in their possession can be used to actually defraud you. The other terminology is called phishing. Phishing is basically a voice over IP. Phishing is when the fraudsters phone a victim posing as a bank official or service provider and uses social engineering skills to actually get the information, actually duping the person unsuspectingly, while at the same time leading them to believe that they are speaking to a bank or service provider. This information is then used to defraud the victim. Be conscious of the fact that criminals can mask their telephone numbers and it may seem as legitimate as a person is actually phoning from a legitimate company that is actually making the call. So some of the fraud awareness on how to actually shop safely online. You can register for 3D Secure or V by V, which is referred to as verified by Visa. 3D Secure is more on the MasterCard side. Make purchases with your credit card on reputable sites that are verified as secure sites. Look out for the image on the toolbar. So on your URL, you will see that you have HTTP. HTTP is unsecure if it doesn't have an S. So in essence, HTTPS sites are more secure. When receiving promotions or deals via the email or telephones, you will always receive this as a marketing strategy that most of the criminals actually use. Always verify the validity of the source. Be very wary on too good to be true offers. Do not send emails that contain personal information such as your credit card numbers, expiry dates, or any personal information that is actually wanted by that specific site. Remember that banks will never ask you for personal information. Install a spam blocker on your systems. This will basically filter out all spam mails so it doesn't come into your inbox and rather goes into your spam box. Never allow any websites or merchants to save your personal information or banking details. A good example would be is that if you are doing or buying online from Mr. Delivery as an example, where your card details are basically being needed to actually conclude the transaction, make sure that you go back to your profile and delete the card information that is basically entered. Because what happens is that it automatically saves onto that specific website. But it's up to you to basically go and delete that information. It's better to basically enter your card details, your expiry date, and your CVV number every time that you actually do a specific purchase. Some sites save it so that when you go back to the site, your card details are already there. But that is then a risk to you and to basically the bank itself. Do not send emails that contain personal information such as card numbers, expiry dates. As I mentioned, the banks and institutions will not ask you for such information. Install a spam blocker on your system. Never allow any website of a merchant to save your personal and banking details. Never save passwords or PIN numbers on your desktop. Change passwords frequently. A good example to actually get, and I know that in some instances, a lot of them have many passwords. I know a survey and some stats reveal that one individual can have up to actually 100 passwords. So one tip that I can give you as students or to anyone is basically listening is that how do you actually maintain passwords? By using a password manager, yes, you can do that also. But a new way of actually trying to safeguard yourself is that think of a song that you have or you like and use the first letter of each word as your password. Always use uppercase and lower cases and also different characteristics. So it makes it much more difficult for the criminal to actually guess what the password is. Using passwords as password 123 or your name 1234 is actually a risk to you. These are basically terminologies, or should I say the terminology that the bank actually uses, or the not the bank, sorry, the criminals use, where they actually use password spraying. So they know that your name, and they would basically use different combinations to try and guess your password. Don't carry unnecessary information or personal information. The reason being that if you are basically being robbed, that information can be lost. Rather carry in your possession, if you are carrying any personal information, rather carry it, not the actual ones. You can basically print out and use a second version of your ID or whatever personal information you have in your possession. Don't disclose personal information such as passwords and PINs. I think that is basically a given. Don't write it down. Don't write PINs, passwords. Don't use internet cafes or unsecured terminals for banking, especially if you are basically traveling at airports from one city to another city. I know that most of us actually look for free Wi-Fi. This is a risk because somehow the criminals can basically crack your system itself and then hack your system, and then also then at the same time get access to the information of your bank's platform. When destroying personal information, you must shred it. Do not just take your statements that you get from your banks or from any institution and just squash it up and put it into the bin. Always make sure that you basically shred it. Pay attention to account cycles that can identify when communications are intended for you that have not reached you. Check your credit report for major credit bureaus annually. Always open your credit card statements or your bank statements right away and check for any undisputed transactions so that you can actually alert your bank that these transactions were not done by you. Accounts that are basically not used, make sure they are closed. Request bank statements to be delivered by email. Nowadays, I think the banks have basically, those that have the banking app itself, you can actually access the information via your banking app. Avoid giving any personal information over the phone, mail, or internet. Enter only personal information on secure websites, but that also try and avoid only if it's necessary for you to basically enter that type of information, then only enter that type of information. Otherwise, you're at the risk of revealing information that shouldn't be on that specific website. So the chain on basically how the opportunity is actually created by the criminals itself is that when you receive a telephone call, you believe that the call is basically coming from your bank or a legitimate service provider, and as the person is talking, you buy into the story that the other person on the other end is actually the actual person, and out of fear or a sense of urgency from the person who gave you the call, purporting to be the bank or from the service provider, where they will tell you that your account can be closed if you do not give this type of information. And then what happens in the end is that once you buy into the story that you are basically giving the information to a legitimate person, you're actually giving away your confidential information to the criminal. So once that has been done, you are now being vished. This criminal now has your information, he has confidential information, where they can actually log into your account and then steal the money from your account itself. So remember always that you've got the power. The choice at that stage when you receive that call or any information that you're revealing is a risk. Don't do it. If you sense that something is off, it probably is. So if you have second thoughts, always remember anything that is too good to be true is always not true. Thank you.